All right, so in this episode, we had the great fortune of sitting down with Representative Susie Lee out of Nevada. She is a member of the U.S. Congress and a big champion of solar energy and clean energy more broadly. And she was kind enough to give us some time after a very long day of votes over on Capitol Hill. And she sat down and talked with us about primarily about permitting reform, which is a hot topic on the Hill these days, and how some of the policies that they're thinking about can help, lower costs for everyday Americans. And it was a really great conversation.
Right. The insight into the ground game, what's going on the floor right now, how are members of Congress negotiating with each other,
Mm-hmm.
what are their stumbling points, and we're just so proud that she spent a little bit of time with us. She's been a fierce advocate for the solar and storage industry for years now.
Yeah.
She's been holding her seat since 2019, original champion of the Inflation Reduction Act. So she speaks the language. She understands what the challenges are that the energy industry is really facing and what grid operators are facing and what governors are facing.
Mm-hmm.
And so her perspective is really important. I think our listeners are going to enjoy it. Let's just dig right in. I want to just set the table a little bit on a few of the things we want to talk to you about. We want to talk about affordability. We want to talk about permitting reform. And hear a little bit more about your background. Obviously, Americans are facing a pretty significant affordability crisis right now. Cost of everything is going up, including energy. And it's because Americans, the cost of energy is going up because Americans are electrifying their lives. Demand for energy is going up because we are, in a global race for AI and improving our domestic manufacturing access here in the United States. And the only way to put downward pressure on those prices is to sort of add more supply, add more electrons to the grid. And so we wanted to sort of kick this conversation off by asking you what you think is going on in Congress. What's the status of permitting reform, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, well, listen, first of all, with respect to affordability and, what we're seeing with renewable energy, obviously I represent Nevada, which has capacity in all forms of renewable energy, obviously solar and wind and geothermal. When it comes to affordability, when it comes to people keeping their energy costs down, the quickest form of energy to get online is solar. And what we have seen in Nevada, which saw a big transformation with respect to residential solar, as a result, quite honestly, of the IRA with the tax credits, people were able to see their energy bills come down an average of $1,400 as a result of installation of residential solar. Just look at the tax credit for installation of rooftop solar. Without that, Nevada homeowners just had like $8,000 taken off the table for them. That was on average, what they saw as a result of that incentive to install solar energy. And so, what we are seeing with this administration, I say it's almost a revenge type of situation where they witnessed under the Biden administration, which really tried to incentivize with the Inflation Reduction Act, transformation to add additional sources of energy. And this administration basically wants to exact some blood because they feel like the oil and gas industry was hurt under the Biden administration. So they're taking it as their sole mission to hurt the renewable energy, the wind and solar, in particular, the wind and solar industry. And so, we passed the SPEED Act, which was our form of permitting reform. I had an amendment. I asked Chairman Westerman, I 3 times I attempted to get some parity for renewable energy, just to say, under this administration, any solar or wind project has to get the personal approval of the Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum. And in Nevada, we have $17 billion of solar energy projects that are at risk because of this requirement. And so it's just, I find it very short-sighted that we want to talk about permitting reform. We want to talk about lowering the cost of energy for, people all over this country, but yet we want to put our foot on the scale to really penalize renewable energy. And so I had an amendment to the SPEED Act that just said, let's just give a parity to all forms of energy. It doesn't matter. And by the way, it would protect oil and gas in a future administration. It would just say that all forms of energy are created equal. I had an amendment in the committee that didn't pass. I did an amendment in rules that didn't pass. I did an MTR with an amendment, and that didn't pass. So despite that, the SPEED Act did pass the House of Representatives. Now it's sitting in the Senate. And in December, the president basically stopped all wind projects in their tracks, wind projects that were underway. And in response, Senator Whitehouse and Senator Heinrich, both obviously important members in the Senate, who, are responsible for moving the SPEED Act along in the Senate, basically said, we're not touching this until we go back and give some type of parity to wind and solar. And so that's sort of where we are. I warned Chairman Westerman that this bill had no chance of going forward in the Senate unless we took care of this in the House. And we're seeing that play out right before our eyes. And guess what? Who suffers? It's the American people. I mean, it's people who want to bring their energy costs down. And for me, it's like, it's not an either or, it's an all of the above forms of energy. I mean, we have such high energy demands coming on board with AI across the country. Let's give all forms of energy equal footing. If we want permitting reform, let's make sure it applies to everything.
Well, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what the conversations you're having with colleagues on the Hill about where we could go from here, knowing that this has become such a sort of divisive political football of an issue. It seems like there should be a lot of common ground to be found about what you mentioned on all of the above sort of energy choices and just reaching parity and based on your read of sort of the political environment, what can we be doing as an industry? What can sort of the outside forces be doing to help to keep this conversation moving?
Yeah, during the debate about my amendment, which, by the way, was the most widely supported amendment to the Permitting Reform Act, I sensed Republicans across the dais actually agreeing with what I had to say. I mean, it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. It's just saying, just give parity to all forms of energy. And so, I really think it comes down to one, unfortunately, I feel that a lot of their hesitancy in approving this amendment wasn't because of anything other than they didn't want to upset the president, who has made it his sole mission to really be anti-solar and anti-wind. That being said, I think we need to, really go after members, especially on the Senate committee, to basically get them to understand and put this provision into the bill, come to an agreement, and really pressure this administration to lift the restriction that they have on wind energy. That's really the main piece of the puzzle that is really preventing us from moving forward. And it really is going to come down to members in, I'm just going to say important states, really pressuring this administration to ease up on that so we can move all forms of permitting reform forward. Unfortunately, in this Congress, it just seems that a lot of our policy comes out of the White House rather than the House of Representatives. And so there needs to be a pressure both at the administration level and, of course, at the House and the Senate level as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to point out that if the administration wanted to lower prices tomorrow, they could do that by lifting restrictions on the secretary signing off on all permits at DOI. So we couldn't agree with you more. And I feel like with over 500 projects nationwide at risk, and over I think 10 of those projects are in Nevada,
Yeah.
we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We don't have a
I
choice.
think it's over half of the capacity uh, capacity is literally being held up. They've only approved one project that we know of since this requirement has come down. And I think we just need to keep hammering on what this means in terms of energy costs for American ratepayers. And, I mean, when you look at my constituents, what stresses them out is just everyday cost of living. It's the cost of groceries, it's the cost of energy, it's cost of gas, it's cost of healthcare. But energy is such a big part of that. And, nothing pisses people off more when they see their their electricity rates go up. And this is just like such a simple way to really be a quick fix. And, I mean, it does appear that the president is focused on cost of living affordability because he's seeing his poll numbers go down. And so I think that, the one thing SIA can do is just continue to press across the country on what bringing renewables online would do. And by the way, the other thing I think that's important to really educate um, people about is time and again, Republicans are like, oh, but it's just intermittent energy. And I was like, well, the last time I checked, like, we've done a pretty incredible job of building capacity with battery storage.
Mm-hmm.
With battery storage now, the intermittency of solar and wind is not as big of an issue as it used to be. And so I think that, they just sort of fall back on that as a talking point, but it's a false one right now. And it's one that is going to be less and less relevant to their argument moving forward.
Yeah.
Right. We agree. Storage is ultimately the key to reliability over time. And with the snowstorm coming, I think we're going to see states that have more storage, folks that have rooftop solar are actually not going to struggle in the same way that some folks who are connected to the grid will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Congresswoman, you've been very generous with your time, but we agree that there's sort of a need for continued pressure on this sort of the opportunity that solar and storage and other forms of clean energy can provide to lower costs for Americans and create a reliable grid. I guess I just ask any sort of closing thoughts on where you think we're headed this year, and we're in an election year, and we're staring down the barrel of rising costs and a lot of challenges on the economic system. In addition to permitting, is there anything else that you're sort of looking at in Congress to address these issues?
One of the things that I look at when we look at how we can bring energy sources online quicker, et cetera, is sort of at a higher level coordination to make sure that we got all everyone firing at all cylinders firing at the same time, that we're, processing land approval, that we're bringing on transmission, that we're, obviously getting natural resources that we need, the essential elements, and all of the ingredients we need to bring. And by the way, the tariff war doesn't help either.
Mhm.
Respect to that. So, it's sort of like, how are we going to make sure that developers of energy have some sort of certainty that they know when they make an investment, that they have a timeline, that investment is going to come to fruition, that transmission's going to be there, that they're going to see it turn into actual energy and energy transmission. So we need to work on the whole lifespan of energy and making sure that we're breaking down those barriers. And, as an appropriator, I find a lot of times, being in the minority, that is really fighting against some cuts to essential agencies or essential components that help us do that. And, for instance, in the recent bill we just passed, they wanted to zero out the solar energy department of the EPA. We fought back on that. And so, right now, unfortunately, a lot of times we're on the defense on some of this stuff. But again, I do believe that there is bipartisan support. And by the way, when you look at potential for renewable energy, the states that, have some of the greatest potential happen to be red states.
Mhm.
And so I know that there's an opportunity. Like, I work with Juan Ciscomani from Arizona quite a bit, my colleagues from Texas. I mean, there are areas where we need to be working together. And I think that going into this election, I mean, it's pretty clear the president does not want to see the House flip to Democrats. So he's going to do everything in his power, as long as we continue to focus on what this means for ratepayers, what it means for energy costs, how important it is to have, the certainty, have, shorten the approval process, streamline permitting, bring in, everything we need to get this type of energy online, and what it means to ratepayers and affordability. And, I think that the Trump administration thinks the be all end all is oil and gas. And the other thing I think we need to continue to reiterate is that it's an all of the above. Our energy needs are so great, and they're growing exponentially, and we're just not able to keep up. And when you can't keep up, it's a supply and demand issue. And the people who end up getting stuck are your, residential ratepayers, who are seeing their bills go through the roof. And so I think continuing to draw that line, and just how important bringing, solar and wind, geothermal, bringing all sorts of energy. And by the way, even advanced nuclear, we know, is part of the mix as well. I mean, we got a waste issue that we don't like in Nevada, but we're still, we understand that we're going to need all forms of energy.
100%. We've been keeping you now for a good long time, and I just wanted to say that we reach hundreds of thousands of people through our channels. We represent, 12 more than 1,200 companies around the United States, and I know I speak for everybody when I say thank you for fighting on our behalf. We appreciate everything you're doing on behalf of the industry and the American citizens. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all you do. And we're going to keep fighting. We're going to win this.